Welcome back to the show. In this video, we're diving into a high-stakes international chess match, a story about a personal and political rivalry that spanned decades and stretched from the corridors of the UN headquarters in New York all the way to the political battlegrounds of East Africa. It is a story of two Ugandan heavyweights, President Museveni and one of Africa's most brilliant diplomats, Ambassador Olara. If you follow East African history, you might know that Otunnu served as a UN Under-Secretary General and was a towering figure on the global stage. But what many people miss is the raw, furious political war fought behind closed doors in 1991 and 1996 when Olara had his eyes on the ultimate prize, United Nations Secretary General. Why did he fail to secure it? Because his own president worked tirelessly behind the scenes to sabotage him. Let's break down how a domestic power struggle erupted into international diplomatic warfare. To understand why Museveni would actively fight his own countryman on the world stage, we have to rewind to 1985, before Museveni took power in 1986. Through his National Resistance Army guerrilla movement, Uganda was governed by a military council led by General Tito Okello. Serving as foreign minister in that government was a young, sharp, Harvard and Oxford-educated lawyer named Olara. When Museveni captured Kampala in January 1986, Otunnu went into exile. To Museveni's government, Otunnu wasn't just a former minister. He was viewed as a dangerous political opponent, remnant of the whole regime with vast international influence. And international influence was no joke. Otunnu had served as Uganda's permanent representative to the UN in the early 80s, chaired the UN Security Council, and by the early 1990s was aiding the International Peace Academy in New York. He was respected, articulate, and deeply connected in global diplomatic circles, which brings us to 1991. In 1991, the UN was searching for its next Secretary General. The unwritten rule was that it was Africa's turn to lead the global body. Unwritten. Otunnu's name quickly gained traction among Western nations and international diplomats. He had the intellect, the record, and the reputation. But in the world of UN politics, there is one major unwritten rule. It is nearly impossible to become Secretary General if your home country actively opposes you. Normally, a nation celebrates when one of its own is considered for the top job at the UN. But Museveni's government saw Otunnu's potential rise as an existential threat. If Otunnu became Secretary General, an exile and political adversary would hold the most powerful diplomatic microphone on earth. So, what did Museveni do? According to Otunnu, the Ugandan government waged a fierce campaign, day and night, to torpedo his candidacy. They made it clear to the Organization of African Unity and directly to the UN Security Council that Otunnu did not have the backing of the Ugandan state. Instead, African support consolidated around Batro's Galley in 1991. Fast forward to 1996 when the seat was open again, the same play was executed. Museveni administration refused to support Otunnu, cutting off any official diplomatic path to the Secretary General's chair. But here is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Museveni could block Otunnu from an elected position that required state sponsorship, like Secretary General, but he couldn't stop the UN Secretariat from using Otunnu's talents. In 1997, Kofi Annan became UN Secretary General, recognized Otunnu's immense skill, and appointed him as UN Under-Secretary General and Special Representative for Children and Armed Conflict. Because this was an internal appointment made directly by the Secretary General rather than an international election, Museveni's government couldn't veto it for 8 years, from 1997 to 2005. Otunnu held one of the highest posts in the UN, authoring landmark resolutions like Security Council Resolution 10612 to protect child soldiers. All the while, back home, he didn't even hold a valid Ugandan passport. Another move Otunnu blamed directly on Museveni to restrict his movement as a private citizen. Otunnu had to travel the world on a UN Laissez Passer diplomatic passport, not Ugandan passport. In 2009, after more than 2 decades in exile, Olara finally returned to Uganda. He swapped the quiet halls of UN headquarters in New York for the brutal reality of Ugandan opposition politics. He took over the presidency of the Uganda People's Congress, UPC, and ran directly against Museveni in the 2011 presidential elections. The rivalry that had played out quietly behind closed doors at the UN Security Council meetings in New York was now playing out on campaign trails in Kampala, Kitgum, and across Uganda. So, when we look back at the history, did you wear Museveni block Olatunnu's UN bids? The answer is a resounding yes, especially when it came to his ultimate ambition of becoming UN Secretary General in 1991 and 1996. It serves as a masterclass in how domestic rivalries spill over onto the global stage, proving that the national diplomacy, your fiercest opponent isn't always sitting across the negotiating table. Sometimes it's a government back home. That's it for today's deep dive in this video. If you enjoy this breakdown, make sure to hit that follow, to subscribe that button, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who loves political history. Until next time, stay curious because the next video is coming within minutes.